morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Welcome to this May 15th Indigenous Emergency Management information and news you can use. This is our daily situation brief for the hazards and risk activity going happening around the country, treaty nations, self-agreement lands, Inuit, Métis nations. And we do this every morning. You can get a copy of our daily situation report on app.hazardscape.com, which is what I use to reference today's activities, and you can download a Word copy of it for your own community's use. But we follow along with an opening summary of some of the big things that are going on, some of the major hazards and risks, which primarily continue to be the long-term drinking water advisories that remain in effect across 37 nations. And the flood protection measures at Peguis First Nation remain in place as a precaution, with a gradual removal closure to the end of May, as some people still remain evacuated there. Kashkuin First Nation evacuees will be able to return home beginning Monday, even though the community does not yet have access to safe tap water due to ongoing issues with their water treatment plant and some crypto poisoning. Manitoba declared a public health emergency as the province continues to see some of the highest HIV rates in Canada. And health officials in Patrick Young, Nunavut, say that there's an active and serious rabies threat in the community. So further down in our situation report, there's some contact information if you're in Nunavut in that community to report suspicious dogs. And there's 36 active wildfires in BC, which 9 are considered out of control. And we're going to go over the wildfire situation pretty soon here. But in terms of special weather statements, we've got quite a few right now, especially in the prairies, heading into this long weekend. So we've got a rainfall warning up here in this sort of north central part of Alberta. They're looking at 25 to 30 millimeters of continuous rain, 50 meters possible. We head over into here again, more rain in those areas where we're seeing quite a bit of flooding still, and some snow that's going to be mixed into there. Over along the West Rockies, we're going to get, let me pull this down here. Where are we going? Bring this so you can all see. Snowfall may affect travel plans this long weekend for Alberta near Jasper Park. Snow will begin Friday night or Saturday. Also may affect areas as far east Calgary. So typical May long weekend for at least the prairies. And then a snowfall warning with 10 to 20 centimeters even down through the mountains here. As we move east into Saskatchewan, oh, that's the reserve lands. We want the special weather statement. Snow will continue today with local amounts of 2 to 5 centimeters possible, all into that area. Down in South Saskatchewan and Winnipeg, Munyao keeps clicking on the reserve lands. We've got, let me pull that one up. Wind warning. So winds continue to travel east through southwest Manitoba and western Red River Valley. And those are going to hit 90 kilometers an hour, and we'll go over that wind modeling and mapping in a little bit here. And then we have special weather statement for English River, Ontario. Again, those winds continue to move through there, 70 to 80. So we'll map those out shortly. Getting into Newfoundland, more wind warnings, 120 kilometers an hour in that part of the province. Doesn't look like too much up in Nunavut or in the Arctic. Doesn't look like anything in there. Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, Whitehorse, Yukon, looking pretty good. So those are your special weather advisories as of right now, 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. But taking a look at the wildfire risk heading into the long weekend, we've had a lot of shifting and ebbing and flowing going on this week. So I'll show you where we started the week. Right here, this is where we started on Monday with, in the west, high extreme fire danger in southern Alberta, South Saskatchewan, and a bit in Manitoba. And you can see in Ontario where they all had all that precipitation, it wasn't too bad. And then Atlantic Canada, Northwest Territories, and the Yukon. But we're moving into the long weekend with a lower risk of fire danger, which is good, and that's contributed to by the cooler temperatures, some precipitation that we've seen. There's been a bit of an expansion of fire risk in Manitoba, now getting into southern Ontario, southwest Ontario, where Kenora is. This is really just indicators now of things drying up where they were having that precipitation in Ontario, and things starting to dry up in Quebec as you move north, and then Atlantic Canada as well, moving into that moderate areas, and then southern Ontario. So I think what will happen over the weekend is you'll see in the prairies, as those weather statements unfold and through Saskatchewan, the wildfire risk will remain low for the May long weekend, which is nice because I'm already starting to see fire bans being removed in some regions. So check your local region for fire bans. But those are starting to be removed. So if you are brave enough to go camping in the areas where we're going to have some rain and cooler temperatures, high chance you'll be able to have a fire. So that's good. The fire weather index, which is the overall indicator for fire risk, combining all data. This it matches the fire danger, but it just tells us in terms of being an indicator for the size of flames associated with the fire spreading through the forest. This is how difficult it would be to control. So if anything does ignite through southern Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, that's going to be a little bit harder to control in the yellow and blue areas. And then if we go along here and we take a look at, we could take a look at fine fuel moisture code. So again, this is just where those fine fuels on the ground, the surface levels, are going to ignite a little bit easier. So again, Manitoba in that regard is probably the highest risk with that southwest Ontario. This is where that very fine moisture, very fine surface fuels that are going to track, like this is where you track the moisture content. So again, it's following those kind of same drought outlines that we see in the drought monitor. But this drought monitor, keep in mind, was for April 30th. This is what the drought was like in March. But as we'll see, this is always 30 days behind. But I think what we'll see is when the May monitor comes out in June, you'll pretty much see kind of what we're looking at here. So in terms of fire risk, probably better if we look back to like even last year, heading into the long weekend, you could see Quebec, Ontario, BC, quite a higher risk. If we go even a step further into, even 2023, what was it like heading into the May long weekend? Oh, we're not. That's fine. Foil. Let's go to fire weather index. That should be available. There we go. This is what it was like in that really bad year, 2023, heading into the May long weekend. So you can kind of see the big difference, right? That just a few years makes. But of course, what we're seeing is just a really slow buildup. This is the fire risk is going to escalate coming into June and July and August. Those forecasts are still holding, and based on El Nino tracking, we are going to see a very warm summer leading into a warmer winter. And if El Nino kind of keeps moving along the way it is, 2027 summer could be that extremely hot summer that was being forecasted between now and 2030. So 2027 is kind of looking to be the really hot year. This year will be warm, but next year could be particularly even warmer. So that's our fire risk right now. Kind of taking a look at the flood hub, because we do have a lot of that precipitation that's going to be building up in Alberta and into Saskatchewan. You can see here they're still seeing some extreme flood levels that have not quite peaked yet. They're probably going to peak within the next 24 hours. However, with the rain that's coming in, this is probably going to change as we see that precipitation. January First Nation, it is starting to trend down, but it'll be interesting to see in these areas how impacted they are in terms of flooding for the upcoming long weekend. Even up here in North Saskatchewan, still kind of not going to peak until maybe Monday or Tuesday, right? So still not out of the woods yet in terms of flood. If we go back to the special weather outlook, you can see across that Saskatchewan, Alberta, right around that Bonnyville, St. Paul, Cold Lake area into Meadow Lake Provincial Park. If we match that up to the flood hub, you're kind of right in there, just north of there. And that's where a lot of that rain is going to happen, including this area here, where they're even going to get some snow. And it may struggle to accumulate, it says, but snow nonetheless and rain nonetheless. So tracking that wind storm that blew through, you can kind of see it is moving along east, which is leading to those special weather statements in the south. Temperatures are for today are forecasted to start cooling off in the evening. You can see through the prairies. We'll go to the temperature one. Sorry, that was on the wind. You can see it's going to be an okay day through the prairies, Ontario, even up in Northwest Territories, Yukon, Atlantic Canada. But as we get into Saturday, we're going to see those temperatures starting to cool Sunday, especially in the mountains, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. Might not be too bad in terms of, let's change over to Celsius. So, looking at Saturday afternoon, 5 degrees in Edmonton, 12 degrees up in the north there, even 10 in Vancouver. We're not seeing super warm temperatures Saturday afternoon other than in Ontario, Atlantic Canada. So I think what we'll see is the long weekend's going to be very nice in Eastern Canada, in Atlantic Canada, which is going to mean that the fire weather index, just want to make sure we're on the right year, across Quebec, Ontario, into Atlantic Canada, that's going to shift probably into the 16 to 23 as they can expect some nice warm weather. Then getting into Sunday, Monday here, wrapping up the long weekend. By Monday afternoon in Alberta, we do see temperatures kind of get back into those mid-teens. Even up in Northwest Territories, they're going to hit 18, 17 forecast. And it's going to get into Ottawa 27. So yeah, we'll see by Tuesday. That's the morning of how far out do we go here? We can go out to Wednesday. We've got forecasting out to Wednesday at 2 p.m. So we're back into the higher teens in about 5 days, which looking over here in Atlantic Canada, they're going to stay in those 20s. So I'm going to basically just predict that over the May long weekend heading into next week, Atlantic Canada, Southern Ontario are going to be those high risk fire areas, while we have a bit of reprieve in the west and the prairies in the north. But that will shift quickly because those hot spots here with the fire weather index and the fire danger, those might disappear for a little while, but they're not going to be gone for long. We'll see a lot more extreme fire danger pop back up in the west by as early as Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week for sure, or sooner. So I think it's going to be one of those weekends where luckily the May long weekend's not going to be inundated with a lot of smoke, and we're not going to see a lot of that activity unless you're in the east, where that risk is going to be a little bit higher. So going back to our in-depth reporting, we could take a look at fire startups. There hasn't been a lot. Not a lot of new startups. Maybe this one on the 13th. No, 14th, 13th. Nothing of significance. This one was an out of control. That was already at May 14th last night. That was already at 1,000 hectares. So that would probably be in Alberta the highest priority. This one kind of looks new. Yeah, May 14th, 9 p.m. Kind of just west of Grand Prairie into the BC border. So not a lot of new starts in the west. As we move into Ontario, there has been a couple of new starts near Kenora. So that's probably what we're seeing here, the fire weather index, the fire danger. You can see down in southern Ontario, southwest Ontario. They're an extreme there, and that's probably contributing to these fire startups there. Nothing new in Atlantic Canada, Quebec, but dependent on this warm weather coming in, we might see a couple new ones. This one was picked up near Meadow Lake yesterday, almost in the evening, 153 hectares. And I think the Yukon, yeah, those are holdovers from earlier. This one in May, that was a couple days ago, but it's under control. So just picking up some light, smaller fires other than this one of note, kind of just northwest of Calgary. So if you're in those regions, just kind of pay attention to your fire alerts, watch for the fire bans, see what your regional forestry office or emergency management department is putting out there in terms of communications. At app.hazardscape.com, you can get this report right now and download it through Word. I will pull up at this time. I was just saying, Kyle at All About Abatement, they're sponsoring us. They're a First Nations owned abatement and hazardous materials testing company, and they're sponsoring our live situational briefings. So we want to reach out and thank All About Abatement and Kyle at the team for the work that they do. And Kyle, being First Nations, knows firsthand the issues with humidity, overcrowding, especially on reserve, and why it's so important to do that hazardous materials testing for asbestos, lead, previous contaminations from fire smoke. If homes have never been tested, they test for vermiculite in the attic and asbestos, and they've got a really great process for helping housing coordinators, housing managers, and emergency management teams do that pre and post planning and testing. And then Canadian-owned Premier Fire and Flood, who also works very closely with All About Abatement, they've got a lot of services that are targeted specifically to making sure that cultural items like drums, pelts, beadwork are dealt with in a good way through cultural liaisons and elders in the community to guide them. But they've got a specialized process for stopping mold contamination on cultural items so they can clean and restore them so that doesn't continue to deteriorate the cultural items, especially the soft goods. So you can watch, I filmed that process on our YouTube channel. You can watch Premier Darcy take me through that. But we want to thank them for supporting our lives and supporting our daily situation briefs. It's Premier and All About Abatement that make this possible, especially with Kyle being First Nations. He knows the importance of working together with a company like Premier. And Premier also has a 50-foot trailer, mobile response trailer that is staged right now, full of equipment to restore homes following a flood or a fire, or even if the fire didn't enter your community and you just have smoke contamination, they've got the equipment and mobile response unit for that right now to do that testing. So thank you to Kyle at All About Abatement and Darcy at Premier for sponsoring and making this possible. And I'll add too, like their sponsorship also means reduced costs for our training, for all of our services. When we talk to communities about our services, we let All About Abatement and Premier know, and then we can do discounts on some of our services, and they help support that way too. And that's what also allows us to not have to rely on government contracts and government grants, which we don't take any government funding because we believe it's a conflict of interest. We can't advocate the way we do for Indigenous communities if we're being paid by the government. And so we rely on organizations like All About Abatement and Premier to help sponsor the work we do. They're kind of like our grant funder. And we trust them because I've been through 2 major fire evacuations with Kyle and Darcy and their services, and the community feedback has been amazing. And they both employ Indigenous peoples and train Indigenous peoples when they go to set up in a community. So they offer employment as well. So again, just a big shout out to All About Abatement and Premier Fire and Flood Restoration. So again, if you're just tuning in, we do this daily, Monday to Friday. You can get our daily situation briefs on our app at app.hazardscape.com, which we're continually improving and looking for feedback from the Indigenous communities and peoples that use it, because we're trying to co-develop this tool with them. We've built out the base function of it, and this is kind of out here to show what's capable. Now it's time for Indigenous peoples to lead and help to take this over. We've built this platform for Indigenous communities and emergency management professionals and emergency services to see what's possible and to now be involved in the co-development of it, and to also be compensated for as much as possible through our token system. So communities that do contribute to the development of this platform, they can earn back credits for the cost of it. And that's the cost for the server hosting, the cost for the AI analysis, the cost to maintain the services to keep this platform online and up and running. So if you are involved in emergency management or or services for your community and you want to learn more, please reach out. And we do all of our training through this application. So yeah, back to kind of the live weather right now. Again, looking at fire risk across Canada heading into the long weekend. It's going to be pretty low compared to the previous years, but again, we're going to see Atlantic Canada drawing up there. So just something to watch out for as we head into that long weekend. We also have, another tool on the board that we've deployed for Indigenous communities. This is especially important for homeowners, renters, family members that are looking to want to track and inventory all of their personal items in their home in case of an evacuation. And if Indigenous Services Canada provides funding to replace your goods, your personal items, you can track all of that in this application. So we've already got some people using it. I don't know why it's probably running slow because my computer, but you can go in here and you can start to catalog all of the rooms in your home, your family members, what they own, what is in your room in terms of all these appliances, including we've added cultural items with trapping, hunting equipment, rifle, firearms. If you want to report those in secret, the government doesn't have access to this. But you can add all of these items. So if Indigenous Services Canada does provide emergency management assistance funding for your community following an emergency or disaster, you've already have an inventory of everything in your home that could have been lost or damaged, and you can print that report out and submit it to the government. And that is, it's the purpose of this is so evacuees and homeowners don't have to do this when they're in an evacuation center, when they're in a hotel at the worst moment of their lives. They're not having to recall and think about, what was all of the furniture that they had? What was the refrigerator make and model? What was their stove? Yes, a lot of this is band owned, but the nation, unless your nation has a really good inventory and asset management tool, they're not going to know the personal belongings that you have in your home. And then we've also added in a tool where you can request, fill this out to make requests to your housing manager for the type of repairs that you need on your home. And you can flag it if you think it's Jordan's principal eligible, and you can print out that report as well and track your repairs to your nation in here. Because as we know, on reserve housing, especially if you're submitting housing repairs and sometimes they get lost or sometimes they're not well tracked at the admin level, this will allow you to kind of track everything that you reported and you can keep your own history of housing repairs here. So if you have to go look and say what you submitted to the nation on a certain day, you'll have that cataloged in case of, on their end, they lose it. So those are just a couple of things that we're putting out there to support Indigenous emergency management preparedness and planning for communities and for homeowners and members and families that, maybe even if you are lucky enough to have on reserve insurance, home insurance, or your nation is lucky enough to have insurance through the band for some homes, the insurance still needs a record of what that home had in it, including personal belongings if you have contents insurance. and they're still going to need that list. So taking an inventory now with some pictures will save you a lot of time, and it will get you a lot of money back, because often when you're evacuated and you're really stressed out, and it can be hard to recall every little thing that you had in your home. Maybe there's Christmas decorations or items that you had stored away in a special location or in a box, jewelry, and it's not going to be top of mind. You can go and catalog that all now, take a picture, and if it comes time that you have to evacuate and your home is impacted and those items are destroyed, you've got a record of it. So that's all at myhome.hazardscape.com. You can do that. And once we get 100 people signed up to that, we're donating $1,000 to a First Nations Child and Family Services charity that the community within the app will get to choose. But we're going to donate $1,000 after we get 100 people signed up and them with their reporting. So we're going to give back to some child and family services for that. If you do have any comments, or if you're just tuning in now, this is recorded. It will be available on our YouTube channel as a live recording and our Facebook, so you can catch up with anything that you missed from our daily sit rep. And again, if you do want this report, it's available right now for you for free, along with our resource library, where we put all of the data maps and information that we use, along with a Indigenous Emergency Management Knowledge Hub, where if you're an on-reserve emergency management coordinator or involved in EM, or you're Métis or Inuit, you can get some quick info on your role within the emergency management field and your job. So that is all available for you for free on our app. And that's, again, made possible through those sponsorships with All About Abatement, which is First Nations owned, and Premier Fire and Flood Restoration, which is Canadian based. I think that's going to be about it for this live update today. Again, if you are just watching the recording and you would like us to incorporate something that you don't see today, please give us that feedback in the comments on the recording, or you can email us at support.hazardscape.com. We've been doing a project where we map all of the viewers of our lives, and once a lot of them will leave comments for us. This is where my nation is. Those black map pins are from all Indigenous communities across Canada that have reached out to us from these lives, whether they tell us where they are right now on the live or they tell us later. But these are where we have viewers from, and we continue to map those Indigenous communities, and we continue to map out treaty reserves, Indian reserves, Inuit lands, all the lands of the Dene, the Saulteaux up in the Northwest Territories and Yukon, all the way into Newfoundland, the Innu lands in Labrador. So thank you to all of our First Nation, Métis, and Inuit viewers who support us and come here for this information, and then share where they're viewing from and where their community is. I've learned, I had no idea, like a month ago, I had no idea that there was a community on these islands here in the Hudson Bay. I had no idea about Pond Inlet or Igloolik up in these areas, right? Look at Pond Inlet. I think that's the most northern community. Yep, that's the most northern community. And then the most southern down here, Chippewas of the Thams First Nation. So yeah, we get people contacting us and reaching us out from all over as we develop this Indigenous emergency management system to help develop emergency management coordinators, because there needs to be 1,000 more over the next 7 years, and that's kind of what we're helping to do. So yeah. All right, everyone. Well, that's it for today. We will be back next week following the long weekend. We'll see how the weather shapes up over the weekend and how that changes the fire risk behavior for your First Nation, Métis Nation, or Inuit community. I think that's good. So as always, stay prepared, know your hazardscape, and just keep an eye on things and be ready for evacuation. Have that checklist ready of things that you would have to evacuate with. Have that checklist now, put it on your fridge. You don't need a grab and go bag today. You don't have to collect it all today, because it can be hard for some families to store extra food in a bag when they need the food right now. So just keep a checklist on your fridge or by your front door of things that you would grab during an evacuation alert or warning, so you're not fumbling around thinking of what to grab later on. Create that checklist now and then grab all of that in the case of evacuation. And my one tip always too for Indigenous communities, because often elders and vulnerable people and families will be allowed to evacuate first ahead of time. And often a lot of families don't go with their elders. Some stay back, but that causes separation. So if you're in that situation, just go as a whole family unit when you have the opportunity and don't wait. All right, everyone, thanks for your time, and we will see you next week. Stay safe, stay prepared.